The president's men rushed to turn the ceasefire into a peace treaty. They would apply all America's diplomatic muscle. They chose an unlikely venue.
Welcome to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, one of the largest and most diverse United States Air Force installations.
With his re-election looming, President Clinton gambled that cooped up in the base, the three Balkan presidents would hammer out a deal. He gave his men 17 days to twist their arms.
Are you optimistic about the talks?
I am. If I'm not, I wouldn't be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Americans' hopes for peace depended on Milosevic, who now spoke for all the Serbs.
How confident are you the talks will succeed, sir? Come over here. How confident are you the talks will succeed?
Well, I'm optimist. I believe the talks will succeed. We attach the great importance to peace initiative of the United States.
On behalf of President Clinton, I welcome you to the start of these historic peace talks. If we fail, the war will resume, and future generations will surely hold us accountable. And then I walked around to the other side of the table where they had been carefully placed, and I sort of pushed them together and urged them to shake hands, which they did.
Izetbegovic knew these talks would ratify the division of his country. He'd already agreed to share half of Bosnia with his dangerous allies, the Croats. The rest would go to the Serbs.
Moram reći da su prve karte prvih dana dolazile potpuno neprihvatljive i ja sam komentirao u jednom momentu da su Srbi po svojoj prilici prespavali zadnjih pola godine dana.
From the start, Izetbegovic told his prime minister to conduct the talks.
We cannot revive the dead. We cannot revive the 17,000 children dead in Bosnia. But we can get some justice here, and that justice means a fully functional Bosnian state. Integrity, sovereignty, justice, democracy. Thank you. Okay.
The Americans limited the issues the conference could consider. No talk of war crimes, no other problems like Kosovo, just the future of Bosnia. The parties agreed to devolve powers to a federation of Muslims and Croats and a Serb republic, and that the Muslim-Croat Federation would have 51% of the territory. For days, the argument raged over the final shape of the map.
I had always had in my mind a 17-day conference, and here we were on day 16, and we were nowhere further than we've been on day 11. It was a very cold and biting day, but I said to Milosevic, let's walk. And Chris Hill and Milosevic and I took off, accompanied by security guards, and we walked out to the edge of the base and around the fence.
And we ended up at the officers' club at about 11:45.
Holbrook's assistant then invited the Bosnian Prime Minister to the officers' club.
I went over to say hello to Silajdic, and I told him that Milosevic wanted to talk about Gorazda.
And he wanted to come to my table.
He said no.
The fact that he comes to my table gives him, in a way, a psychological advantage. But he is doing something, that he is making a concession, and so on. So I said, no, I'll go to his table. These are the small Balkan ways.
They began to speak in Serbo-Croatian. And Milosevic was saying to Harris, what do you want?
What he asked for was security for Gorazda, the one remaining Muslim enclave in eastern Bosnia.
We wouldn't leave it as an enclave there. We had to connect it territorially with the rest of Bosnia.
Kriza u Bosni I Hercegovini može se rešiti samo političkim putem. Ne može se rešiti vojnim sredstvima.
And he said, enough is enough, I'll connect it. I will do that. You can get a road under the international control from Gorazde to the territory.
It was agreed that NATO would build the Gorazde-Sarajevo road. So now Milosevic had to negotiate with the Americans just how much Serb land he'd give up for it.
So that night I brought President Milosevic into our little map room where we had these high-tech video games used to make more precise bombing. We had the entire aerial photograph of the entire country.
They had to find a corridor through the mountains that was wide enough to be made defensible for the new road to Gorazde.
And we began to, quote, fly President Milosevic up and down a road that ran through the mountains from Gorazde to Sarajevo, which if upgraded, might do the trick. We did this till about 2 in the morning while a great amount of alcohol was consumed. Finally, Milosevic stuck out his hand to me and said, "Okay, this is it."
And he drank a toast. Richard Charles Albert Holbrook, we have found our road.
The road gave the Muslims more territory. The Americans made a chart to show Izetbegovic that the Gorazde corridor took them well over the 51% of Bosnia they had been promised.
We showed that to Izetbegovic as part of the reason to urge him to conclude this deal. Don't let this deal get away.
On the top of one of the panels, big letters, the Federation gains 58% of the territory. And when he left, that panel was left in President Izetbegovic's room, between the couch and the night case, the lamp place, and so on. So the only thing that you could actually see, if you sit in the room, was the Federation has 58%. And then Milosevic came to visit President Izetbegovic, and what he saw was that.
Milosevic didn't see the humor of it. He strode over to the U.S. delegation.
He erupted. He said, I didn't know that I'd given up this much territory.
I said, "I'm very sorry." He said, "You know, only 5149 can work, and that is our commitment."
Holbrook gave the two sides until midnight the next day to agree a 5149 map. In the small hours of the morning, the Bosnian Prime Minister had an idea. He offered Milosevic a huge chunk of land, which his new allies, the Croats, had just conquered. Milosevic accepted.
And they shook hands, and they said, "Okay, we've got an agreement."
So we actually brought in a bottle of wine that the secretary had brought with him, and he said, "Let's celebrate."
Where every previous attempt had failed, the Americans had succeeded. They'd ended the war in Bosnia. But in their excitement, they forgot the Croat delegation.
Državni tajnik Christopher je predložio da će on doći oko 1 sat nakon konačnih razgovora sa Miloševićem. On nije došao do 1, mi smo ga čekali do negdje 2 sata. Oko 2:30 smo išli spavati.
I just felt that something was very wrong here. And I leaned over to Chris Hill and said,
Better get Tujman in here. And I said, Dick, it's 4:15. How about I'll get Mate Granic?
Kazao je da bi državni tajnik želio sa mnom razgovarati hitno.
Granic arrives sometime at 4:15 or 4:20 in the morning, dressed impeccably.
I could see him sort of looking to the side because he could see something that looked like a map.
I oni su me nudili šampanjcem. Ja sam tražio vode prije nego što vidim prijedloge njihove konačne mapa.
And we produced the map. And Mate Granic, mild-mannered physician, turns into a rhinoceros.
Because the map actually cut into what mainly Croat forces took from Serbs in Western Bosnia.
I oni su mi predložili potpuno neprihvatljiv prijedlog.
He jumps up, hits the map with his hand, says, "Impossible, impossible, 0.00% chance my president will accept this."
Ja sam to energično odbio i rekao da to nema 0.0 chance za prihvatiti, da je to absolutely unacceptable za nas.
And he turns on Saladic and he just rips him. He says, "You have given away the territory we conquered."
Remember, it was almost 20 days of negotiating. We were all very much exhausted, very little sleep.
In 37 minutes, the peace agreement had collapsed. It was left to President Clinton to try to rescue the conference. He phoned the Croat president and asked him to surrender some of the territory they'd refused to give up the night before.
Ja sam predsjedniku Clintonu rekao, dear president, I already did that. Ja, jer sam ja već odlučio da znači da zbog, molim, ovih nekoliko kilometara brdovitog kamena ne dovedemo u pitanje mir.
But he said, I will do it only if the Bosnians also give up part of the land they claim.
This time, before celebrating, they checked with all parties.
We've got to decide right now. And there was a very, very long pause.
Ja sam rekao, ostajemo. On je samo rekao, onda je sve u redu.
I said to Warren Christopher, let's get out of here.
Dick Holbrook looked like he was in front of a gas chamber and they just pulled him back. I hope he watches this.
I wonder if we could ask the three presidents to stand up and for us to join them standing and express our appreciation for what they've done in Dayton and our hopes for the future.
Four years on, the Dayton peace is still holding. The three communities forced to a minimum of cooperation by a huge international military presence. But in the place where